budget work session. Thursday, July the 14th already. Goodness.
Okay.
Mark, Rochelle, who wants to take over?
I will kick off by giving it straight to Rochelle. We've been working diligently. We've been shorthanded and a little late getting this out, but that's why we wanted to have 3 different meetings. The first today, just kind of more of a presentation, not really for a review at this point, just kind of go over some things and share our ideas. And then next week, we'll really take comments and change things. Any comments that would come up tonight, we change that before next Thursday as well. And then the 28th is when we plan on approving the final budget. We've spent quite a bit of time, multiple spreadsheets, probably 6 different spreadsheets, just on personnel alone, trying to get that situated. As discussed previously, I wanted to have what I call my wish list, what it would take to truly get us where we should be. Based on the previous pay band system that was approved, I want to say it was in 2015. There was different pay bands based on the positions of employees. Lower level employees started at a pay band 1, for example, summer hire, seasonal labor, going all the way up to city manager, which was a pay band 15. Throughout that, though, those years, it was never really upkept. As minimum wage went up and as cost of living increases had gone up, that spreadsheet never changed. So that's something that we need to do anyhow. Again, this is kind of my wish list that we had put together on paying employees what they're worth. And the first spreadsheet we started with, it started at 781 when it was first adopted.
So it's not that spreadsheet yet.
Not that one.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
Okay.
I didn't have any spreadsheet on the pay band.
I'll just give an overview on it though. So what we did, the original pay band, the minimum wage for the lowest entry level position was $781 per hour. Obviously now we're at $11.50 per hour. January 1 will go up to $12 per hour. So the first example of the many spreadsheets we created was just taking the $12 minimum wage and subtracting that $781, which gave us $419, and we just increased all the pay bands by $4.19. That didn't work alone because that's not fair to our tenured employees that have been here for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They shouldn't be starting at the first step of that pay band. So the next step was determining the 25-year retirement that some of us were grandfathered into, some of the existing employees, and then at a certain point it kicked over to a 30-year retirement through PERA. So most of these were figured at a 30-year. You have a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum paid wage, starting wage. We determined dividing that by 30, we got a percentage, and it came down to 38 cents between each step. So you figure it's a pay band and then 30 steps. So the thought process is when you come here and you start for the city, if you started at the water department, you want to retire there, you would start at the $12 minimum wage, and then you would work your way up each year. You get 38 cents bump to the next step, and by the time you retire, you would be making a lot more than you started. The way the system is now, unfortunately, we've had people that are here 20 years and they're making close to what minimum wage is going to go up to at $12 an hour. I don't feel that's appropriate. We need to retain our employees. We need to be able to recruit and be competitive with other people in the region. For example, we had talked about the police department where they are slowly falling behind. They received a $2.50 increase in 2017, August of 2017.
Yes. July.
$2.50 across the board for everybody in that department. And they were competitive. They were fine for a smaller department and kind of in the region, but now everything's gone up. So from what I've heard, I think Guadalupe County and Santa Rosa are increasing their starting wages. I think it's $18 an hour. Here, the county's talking about going up to. We've always paid better than the county. If we continue to leave our wages where they're at now, a starting officer makes $16.37 uncertified and $17.76 certified.
And isn't state police going up also?
State police is,
Yeah, that's out. There's.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
They're the
so
ones that started all this
other
crap.
areas or municipalities are increasing, so,
correct.
and we have not.
And I believe, like I said, Guadalupe County and in Santa Rosa, I forget what it is now, but they're looking at, I think, $20 per hour starting. I think the sheriff's office might have been $25 per hour. So it's gonna be hard to compete with that. I believe we're getting short staffed in the police department as it stands. I know we lost one officer that moved out of town, and I imagine others may look at the opportunity of going elsewhere because they can make some more money. So we want to retain the employees we have, pay them what they're worth, but also, again, for new recruits. We have numerous vacant positions, anywhere from wastewater to water, parks, do not park streets for sure. We have a vacancy here at City Hall. I mean, we have vacancies almost in every single department. And it's hard to be competitive. So I just wanted to give an overview of the personnel. And like I said, we've been working hard on this. Numerous spreadsheets, still don't have it figured out. And I don't know if you want me to relay it, but I think we're looking at least the wish list. Again, this isn't going to happen. We've talked about maybe doing this over a few years, maybe 2 years, possibly 3. But if we were to do it immediately, it'd be at least about a $500,000 increase, $500,000 from the previous year, correct? So not sure. We also ran an option where we did $1.50 across the board. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I'll let you present, Rochelle, and then we'll discuss things as we go.
Okay. So I wasn't really wanting to start with personnel. I really wanted to start with the spreadsheets that I handed out to you, which is your GRT, because I know in several of the meetings you have asked. So this is the breakdown. As I mentioned before, New Mexico Tax and Rev has changed the way they distribute the GRT now, so everything comes into general fund, and then I have to transfer it back to the other funds where they belong. And also, as I've mentioned, I went back, which on the second sheet is the ordinances and how much percentage is supposed to go and what they are to be utilized for. So in breaking down the GRT based on the ordinances and where they're supposed to be is how I have structured the first spreadsheet. So in the state GRT municipal share, we get 0.5% on there, and we received $1,691,000 in that for that portion of GRT. And then there's the municipal GRT, which is the other half, and we received $802,000. And then we have the one that says that it's for general fund bonds and obligations, and that's a 0.25, and that one was $267,000. And then we have the one that's called municipal infrastructure, which is the 0.125, which the ordinance states is for general fund infrastructure / economic development, and that one was $301,000. Then there's the environmental, which is the 0.0625. They received $151,000. The municipal economic development infrastructure was $301,000. And then municipal capital outlay, which is capital outlay / infrastructure, was $602,000. So, and then of course that's the admin charges. So total GRT for the fiscal year of 22 was $3.9 million, so about $4 million is what we received. So I'm showing a short from what we budgeted was $373,000. Do you have any questions about GRT?
Yes, ma'am.
Which question?
First of all, the admin charges, that's what this additional charge that the state is taking out.
Yes, I have no control over that.
I understand that. So I went to get my, and I probably don't have them. You're saying that out of the 8 point whatever percent that we charge here in Tupelo here in GRT,
8.275.
Well,
plus 0.2 less.
it's on the second page, so it's 8.375 is the total combined rate of all ordinances, including county and state gross receipts tax rate.
Oh, never mind, I just answered no.
Okay. Okay.
So out of that,
So
we get
municipal is
1.8.
1.8125,
Yes,
yes.
okay, I'm sorry.
That's what we get.
Sorry, I saw that.
You're okay. Anybody have any other questions?
Oh, Okay, so this is the budget we have, and this is only based on the tax base that we have right now, all tax base, right?
So this is for fiscal year 22, and this is the taxes that we receive based on our ordinances and what we're allowed to get back.
On GRT.
Yes, and
This is not soft money at all, by what you explained.
It's not what, I'm sorry?
Grants and everything else.
Right.
Different. That's a different.
Well, no, the grants are, any grants or construction going on is what we get back in GRT. But we only get back 1.8125.
That's correct.
Right.
But then when we get grants, that is not included in this, like what the airport grants and all that. That's a different one. What's the total budget for the year for the city?
This is just the revenue for the last fiscal year.
Yeah, this
And I
is,
understand.
GRT revenue, because in
Yeah, that-
addition to that, we get revenue on property tax.
I understand that. What I'm trying to say is, I understand this is all tax.
yes,
Okay, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what is the total so that we can get better defense. Well, sometimes when we get grants and this stuff, that's another, it's not tax, it's a different type of form of income, okay? So what is the total budget for the year? And so this is only the tax base. What is the total that we operate on for the whole year?
We're gonna work towards that, right? This is just steps, you're just showing them.
yeah, I'm just
the year.
talking steps right now. I'm just wanting to give you how much was received in revenue for last fiscal year from
And this is
GRT.
only in the tax base, but there's other revenue that comes in.
Yes, but I'm
And that's-
just talking
that's
about
what I'm trying to
GRT
say.
only right now.
Yeah, and I understand this is all
Because
tax.
I don't have the budget completely finished for fiscal year 22 yet.
Okay,
I'm
so
not-
this is self-explanatory.
Okay.
I don't need anybody to explain that, but I just wanted to get a picture of what the
So-
whole budget is.
Rochelle,
Yes.
and real quick, and you might be wanting to cover it, how much was this up from previous years?
That I would have to look into.
Okay, that's right, don't look.
Okay. I might, well, I would have a spreadsheet, so hold on, and I can tell you what it was last year, or the year before, 21, is that what you're wanting to know?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wait a second.
I tell you what, let's don't do that. Let's wait, because probably before we get into this, you're going to give us a breakdown of each department's revenue and expense ending June 30th, right?
I can, but like I said, it's not finalized, so it's gonna be a very rough number right now, because I'm not done.
Okay,
I still have to get my bars ready. and-
down the road. Okay.
Yeah, so probably on the next meeting,
Let's wait on that.
I will have my bars, which will then be final.
Thank you.
But I can tell you that for fiscal year 21, our total GRT received, as in the same report, was 3.6 million.
So we're up almost 400,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you need
And then
a
we
prior
also-
year or just that year?
No, just that year. I just want to see what kind of the increases.
Just the trends, just kind of an idea, maybe like the past 3 years where
Yes.
we're at, we sit from. I'd like to see.
There's got to be some way to estimate what GRT is going to be in this coming year. It's going to be terrible to do that since everything's so high.
It's gonna be tough.
Well, and it's tough also because it goes back to what Commissioner, or Mayor Pro Tem Moya was talking about. So when we do have grants and we have projects going on, that increases our GRT.
Sure.
So with them going up or down in having those projects will affect our GRT.
And don't forget, we have a new tax basis coming in, and that's a cannabis, and I'm sure it's gonna bring in, even if it's 300 or 400,000 still in income. And that will not be included in this because it's still too new.
And
On
actually, I
quarterly.
do have a trend on here for the last, about 8 years. So in 2020 was 3.2 million, 2019 was 3.1, 2018 was about almost 3.2, 2017 was 3.3, 2016 was about 3, 2015 was 2.9, 2014 2.8, 2013 about 3.
So that tells me that the 4 that we're up is exceptional, except for when there was 2 other years that were up there, but none after that.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so, before I go on, I wanted to talk about a couple of other things that I feel that are very important before we start talking about budget and what we want to see. When I submitted my third quarter financial actuals to, DFA, when they sent back their approval of it, and they have a third quarter general fund actuals review. and where they compare our revenues with our transfers and our expenditures and the balance, and with our beginning budget cash balance. And at the very end, it says number of years until cash is depleted. So the number of years before the general fund cash reserves are depleted in years is 0.39. Not even a year. So that's why I say
So you tell
DFA
me-
is constantly watching our general fund.
Is that good or bad?
I
What's
believe
the
that's
average?
horrible.
Horrible.
I don't know what the average is, but it's not even at a year. So I can't imagine that that's anywhere near good. That's not even half a year.
It was point what now?
0.39
Years.
years,
Or months.
years, number of years,
Okay.
0.39.
0.39, okay. In the scheme of things, I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, or whatever. So what's the average through the state? Is there a baseline?
They don't, I've asked and I can't ever get an answer to say.
Okay, so the statute says when everything's all and done, and let me ask you this now, I'm sorry. Do you have a separate line item for cash reserves to meet DFA?
No.
So all you have to prove is on your cash reserve that you have 1/12 of your budget.
Yes, and they take that out automatically
Which
with their new software portal that they have, it automatically figures that all in.
Right, so that's one
So
month,
that's not including that, right?
that they require you to keep on reserve in case everything goes to heck, that you can operate for a month before grocery receipts start coming back. That's
We would be
why
able to operate.
I'm just
Most of the
looking
time,
at a quarter, 4 months, is probably not that bad, but I don't know, that's what I'd like to know, if that's good, bad.
I'd ask, but they do not do that, because I wanted to know the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
And we just assume that since they put it in the letter like that, that they're pretty much wanting.
Well, and it's in every letter. It's in every letter that I get. Every time I submit one, like when I submit interim budget, when I submit the final, for final approval of budget, it's in every letter. It says, your cash reserves are being depleted. And they used to give it in a percentage.
So I'm thinking either, or DFA analysis should be able to explain or say something for the auditors. I'd kind of like an answer on that.
I know I would have.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm trying to find the letter, where they've sent it before, but every year I get, it's in there, that our cash reserves are being.
Okay. It's first I've heard of something like that. Thank you.
Other things to keep in mind as we go forward is, we are needing to open up a new cell at the landfill. This new cell, we've been given a, estimate on it, and it's gonna cost about $1.6 million. And just real quick, and we can go into this a little bit more, I just wanna, say that based on cash reserves from sanitation and including the sanitation capital line, which is where the GRT goes into, they have about 1.5 million. So,
So we'd completely deplete that, we'd have a shortfall, and we already have to start planning for cell number 5. This would be cell 4, and it took us a while to build up enough cash to be ready
because
for
when was
that.
the last time we opened that other cell, the last one?
Oh, I can't remember now, but it hasn't been too terribly long ago. I mean, they fill up
Actually, 2 or 3 years.
pretty quick.
Yeah, and we had a problem there that they filled up quicker because of other reasons. So, what is their tipping fee now?
Tipping fee, I would say, that's a good question, I'll have to get that.
So the answer to that is, I'm sorry, I don't like raising taxes, raising anything, but that tipping fee is a fee to be able to go into the reserve to open the cell. So because of regulations and everything else, because I'm sure there's new regulations on the new cell that we didn't have to meet on the other cells.
And of course, inflation.
and inflation, so we need to look at.
So I'm glad you brought that up because that was gonna be my suggestion. I don't know if you're gonna hit probably on the next project as well, the wastewater plant, the upgrade to the reuse side of that, which we're gonna have a shortfall as well.
Of 1.1 million for wastewater.
Shortfall? Yes.
Uh-huh. They need to know where we're gonna come up with additional
That's
funds of
when we
1.1
give that
million.
time, that-
So
This is for the, wastewater?
Yes, the wastewater reuse project, which originally was, let's see, so we have funding from Clean Water of 5.5 million. And they had to revise it again with inflation and everything going up. So now the revised total project is 6.2 million with a shortfall of 1.1. So that's both sanitation and wastewater that we're having potential shortfalls in.
So my recommendation, I brought it up at a previous meeting, water goes up automatically at the fiscal year 4%. Right now, sanitation and wastewater only go up 2%. I think they need to be 4 across the board. Like you said, it's never good having to increase, but the State Construction's Program Bureau we're working with through the Clean Water Revolving Fund, they actually recommended relaying that cost for us to be able to float the loan because we have to borrow more money to meet that shortfall. They recommended that we return that charge to the consumers based on the utility bill stating that this is a capital project fee to help.
I'd like it to go on to say because of increased state mandates.
Definitely for EPA, for the wastewater, increase EPA mandates.
You know, we have one of the highest rates in utilities, and I get that. And probably-
It's hard to carry, they're looking because of that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You know, we have one of the highest rates in utilities compared to our Jason County, because I get utilities.
I know they did a,
Did a rate analysis through
Yeah.
USDA. They compared us and they actually thought we were low on the wastewater side because they wanted to nearly double our utility rates when USDA wants to take a loan with them. To float the loan, they wanted to nearly double it. I said, there's no way we can do that.
Can you do that and then check with the league also because sometimes they have a survey. I don't know if they're.
And the only way I can make some money, I get a minimum, I look at the minimum, and I look at the minimum. And that's where I'm basing mine,
okay.
because I do get it directly, like I said, on
Something we need to.
No, I agree.
and so that's why I'm saying we have to be very sensitive.
Is their minimum of, on your other ones, are they based on like the same amount of gallons of consumption? I'm wondering if that may be where the difference is?
Yeah.
Because ours is starts at from 0 to 3,000.
Yeah.
So what's the other one
I
that you?
haven't looked at that, but I look at all the time, because we hardly ever use those, we use the clinic 1 or 2 days a week, so we never go over the minimum. So
Right.
it's always a minimum on all of it.
Right.
You know, and that's where we wind up with.
I just wondered if it's still the same. So Alex, for your question on the tipping fee,
Yes.
he said, so it's a $10 minimum up to 455 pounds, and it's a $46 a ton,
Over the 500 pounds. or
over
400.
500 pounds, yes,
Yeah, how much again, 41?
46. And I feel like that went up a couple of years ago, Mark, didn't it?
I don't,
20 years ago when I
Yeah.
left the city, we were at, I think, 35, 9.5 years ago
Oh,
or
okay.
something. So it's gone up a little.
I thought
They might have
but I-
restructured the last time they were talking about the sale, implementing the new sale.
every time I go out there, it's $10.
Right.
So, and it has been for quite a while.
I mean, maybe the $10
We're not
is the
taking
thing,
any-
because that has been that way.
We're
for a
not
while.
taking any other municipalities stuff anymore.
So the only ones that we're taking in is Logan,
RDM.
like through RDM, but Santa Rosa no longer.
Yeah, I know they have their.
They haven't been there since we went to sell 2, I believe.
Yeah, a long time ago. They go to
Mhm,
where
mhm.
Is it feasible for us to take anybody else?
Well, the thing is the more that we take in, the faster our cells
right.
fill up, which, So we lost revenue when we lost Santa Rosa, which then
Extended.
allowed us to, yeah, extend the life of the cell. So it's kind of a give and take on how we do
Well, that's
that.
what I mean,
Mhm.
because,
But I do know, RDM does bring in quite a bit of trash from
other.
RDM, from wherever they're coming from, and it's
And
quite
that's
a
a
bit.
set rate, isn't it?
Theirs is the $46 a ton.
That's what I mean, so
Mhm.
we'll fill up that sale quick.
Right.
And they weigh them in and out, right?
Right.
No, we have to look at what's in the best interest of the city, Tucumcari City, even in the best interest to take anybody else's scratch other than ourselves. And the reason that is, it might look good in revenue as they pay, but it also is filling in the sales quicker.
Mhm.
And when you're filling the sale quicker, and you don't have the revenue to cover the cost of opening, then we have to pass it back to the consumer, which is, and I know that some are, and I'm gonna say it again, our utilities are high compared to some of the adjacent communities.
So those were the three main things that I wanted to keep in mind as we go forward. So, I have a very, like I said, it's a very rough end of fiscal year 20, or beginning of fiscal year 23. So the beginning cash balances are very, very rough right now, since I'm not done with 22. So 1, 2, 3. Thank you, ma'am. And then Mike, and if you'll give one to Mark down there, please.
Very good.
Thank you. You're
Yeah, no, good.
Okay, so, so if we look on the second page, starting, the general fund, this number, so, you'll see total general fund is showing us with a deficit of 220,000. So when this was, entered at this point for personnel, all that was entered was the increase for the minimum wage employees and the increase for para that is mandated. So just that alone has put us at the 220,000 deficit for general fund. And so of course, every other fund has, they're zeroed out except for a couple of our grants, which is the airport grant and the miscellaneous grants.
And
So, huh?
And fire.
No, fire zeroed out. I zeroed them out. So when I say zero them out, I take their revenue and I increase all their expenses to make them zero.
Okay, but then it goes into a cash fund.
Yes, they have a cash fund. They have
Okay,
their line.
sorry, just,
You're fine.
you know where I'm at.
I do know where you're at, but fire actually has a beginning cash right now of 401,000.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's right there.
So Mayor Pro Tem Moya, you were asking about the grants specifically just a minute ago.
Yes.
So on the third page, up at the top are all of our grants. So you'll see that airport is starting off in a negative 123,597, and that's, again, a very rough number. But that's because this year, or fiscal year 22, we didn't
Hold on a
receive
second, I think I
enough
got
revenue.
lost here. You said-
Oh, don't look at the numbers on the bottom. So if you are, it's page 2 of 3.
Okay, I got page 1 out of the way, and I got page 1's out of the way. Page 2, and then page 3, which one is that? we're
So
talking
page
about?
2.
You said capital projects
Oh, I
and
like
then
your
airport.
Capital projects.
So you're talking about page 2 or 3 right now?
Well, it says 2 of 3 down here on the very bottom.
Right,
That's the
Oh.
one we're on.
okay, all right, that's what, okay, because I numbered mine, and it's page 3.
So again, it's page 3.
Okay, so, yeah, okay.
Okay, so the capital projects, the capital projects up at the top. So airport, again, is starting off in a deficit only because we didn't receive all of the revenue in fiscal year 22. We know how that goes. So putting in the revenues and expenditures that we're expecting for fiscal year 23 would put us favorable again, 308. But again, these are all very rough numbers. So I'm just wanting you, what I did was I took what was left at the end of fiscal year 22 and put that difference for the revenues and for the expenses that were still remaining to receive and go out. But, so I wanted to go back to your question earlier. What was your exact question about the grants?
No, I was trying to see, the total of the budget, how much is brought in by the grant and how much is brought in by the taxes.
I would not, oh,
Yeah, it's very clear, you have.
Okay,
both
you have
of
it?
them.
Okay.
Yeah, you have both of them.
Okay.
So,
okay,
I have one other question, and this is, when we say, okay, that's page one, when we go into what we call, county tax, I think it is.
County tax.
I was looking at it, it was, wow, vision that one. Operating transfer. We were talking about the taxes on the grocery receipts tax.
mm-hmm,
Oh, here it is. Okay, I have it outside. Here it is. Okay, here it is, I got it.
okay,
When we were talking about the, I think it says county gross receipts tax or something like that.
Which,
down at the bottom,
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
the question I have, and I'm trying to put things in my mind as I go through this thing. You know, the tax that we have in the Ute Lake water, that we, that was,
The first
referendum, is that including the inclusion of the taxes here?
the ute tax?
Yeah.
So the ute tax water was, amended back in 2015.
Is to use for other purpose.
Yes, so the money prior that was set aside
Yeah.
for the youth is actually in the joint utility water fund. So on that, I don't know if you guys are numbering page 3, the one we're just looking at.
Okay.
But if you will look at the joint utility water, and you'll see, under administration, and it has an estimated beginning cash, and it says 2.408. That is that Ute Lake water
Okay,
prior to it being amended,
2.8,
2.408,
and that'll remain static.
yes.
that's
Interest,
mandated to have, right? That's correct.
Mhm.
Now, the new revenue coming in from that,
So the new revenue coming in
that
from
we have
that
amended to be reutilized for the.
goes
purpose.
into the fund of 0772, which is called on here joint utility capital improvements.
budgeted 125 on the old.
So if you saw where the 2.408 was, if you'll just go down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like about 10 lines, you'll see the beginning cash of 1.348 million. On that same page we were just on. Mayor Pro Tem. Is that the third page?
Yeah.
Or 2 of 3? Does it say 2 of 3?
Third, is it called third of third?
2 of 3,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, that's the one, I have the right one.
Okay, so
Okay,
if you see the fund department number is
Joint
0772,
utilities, under joint, 1, 2, 3.
joint
4.
utility capital improvement.
So you join capital outlay, okay? And that is what that tax is bringing in,
Yes,
is that one,
the
1,348?
1.348,
So that's pretty
Yes.
good.
Mhm.
Now, this is designated for us to utilize for,
that is designated based on
on the new regulation.
municipal infrastructure projects.
Okay, Municipal infrastructure. Program.
Yes, and so I actually have, give me a second, and let me find it, I do have a little bit more information on it. So they did break it down a little bit more for my own knowledge, because I wasn't quite
Wait,
sure how that worked.
you're saying estimated that, but on your GRT, it's only estimating, or last year's totals were 301,000.
So this is this year's,
This is,
Yes.
and so I have not, last year, it was, so last year, because remember what I just said at the beginning, tax and rec changed the way they sent us the money.
Yes,
So
You
before,
have to
it was
divide it
always
up, right.
broken up, and so now I'm having to move it and
Yes.
separate it a little bit differently, so,
okay.
I have not, again, very rough numbers, so again.
The 1.3 million is what we've accumulated, but we only generated $300,000 in one fiscal year, right?
Thank you, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't bring in 1.3 million just last year. That's been accumulation.
Yeah, no, not just one.
Now, actually, we utilize this a lot for matching funds, is that correct?
The one for,
Oh, seven,
the
seven,
0772,
Mm-hmm.
usually we use it for the street projects, like, the CDBG when we have it in MAP and co-op.
Okay, that's what, matching funds.
So according to the ordinance itself, there's two, number 980 and number 1130. It says that that money can, number one was for the acquisition, construction, and maintenance of the Cube Lake. So that was,
But we have that already
amended.
reserved.
so the second one says municipal infrastructure improvement projects, including but not limited to construction and repair of streets and street lighting, construction and repair of water and sewer lines and treatment systems, construction and repair of municipal buildings and structures, construction and repair of sidewalks and pedestrian improvements.
Now, the reason I want to get a better understanding as we go into the budget is because I'm trying to see where we're going to be able to get money for our employees, because inflation has increased humongous.
Right.
And then the whole deal is, if we have this type of income, when we go for grants, or we go for matching funds, then we have somewhere to get it, which is, right now, in that thing is 1.3 million. And so actually, we're sitting very good there, so that, so we don't have to dip into any other fund. And what we have to look at is other areas that we're gonna be looking at, and how we're gonna be able to afford a good raise for our employees who work so hard for the community.
Right.
And
So I was
so I'm
kind,
trying to put it all together.
Right.
So that everything is covered, because certainly we don't want to lose our grants, because that's where our money comes from. I'm
Right.
surprised that we only got 80,000 CDBG, but,
oh no, we didn't do, CDBG, that's, their beginning cash. They
no,
have
but
some
I'm
cash
looking
left
at
over.
I was looking at the budget. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So what I was gonna say was, I've also been doing the same thing. So when it comes to this fund, the 0772, and in speaking about, the wastewater project, so with the increase, they're looking at, their loan payments being, what did we say, Mark, it's an additional 250,000 for wastewater a year. They're already paying approximately 245,000 on current loans from all of the previous updates that they've had out there.
Okay.
Yeah, they're paying about 245,000, and they need an additional 250 for this $6 million project, and they don't have that money. My concern is I don't wanna necessarily rely on the 0772 only because it's a capital outlay, it's a GRT, not a capital outlay, it's a GRT. So if GRT goes down, then we may not have the money. So, but that was one of my first thoughts to go to help wastewater out with their loan payments.
Is that NFA that you're looking at?
Clean water. Right,
Clean
clean
Water State
water.
Revolving Loan Funds is through NMED, Environmental Department.
And do they do an intercept?
The only time they really intercept is if you default on your loan. I mean,
Okay, no, the reason is NFA, and I assume the others, they look at your revenue stream. If it's not a certain percent, they won't do it anyway.
correct. And it's the same thing, they do that through NMED as well. The issue that I was disappointed in with all this federal funding, we asked them to restructure our current contract with them loan and see if there's any federal funds that they could tie to this. And they pretty much told us at the time, in the meeting we sat in, they had not filled out the paperwork and they did not see that, but they're willing to offer us an additional loan at 0% interest, which it helped us better than what USDA had on the table at the time.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still, to me, disappointing considering all the funds that are floating out there.
Okay, sorry.
Actually, if you look at this, at the 0772, and we need an increase of 245, actually, you can take it out for a year or two.
Right.
Out of that fund. So that's gonna, because we have reserves in it, and we can actually cover that. So actually, we're okay if we utilize that part, because we're not utilizing that much of that.
Yeah, as long as, like I said, so the thing is that if it comes to the point where we rely on
No,
Not
but that's
gone to
only,
pay the
no,
loan
I'm
we
looking
made
at the,
now.
I'm looking at the 1 year budget that we're looking at now.
Yeah, and we're not at the low point yet because they're still in construction, but it's at least a year, 2 years out.
Yeah.
To be thinking of where
You're gonna be at.
I can get $245,000 more.
And there's one of the areas you can get it from, because actually that's what it is designated for. So we're looking at that, and I don't know what kind of income we're gonna get for the new industry that came in, the cannabis, and that's gonna help us a little bit.
Yeah,
We
and,
don't have any way to project it, because we don't have anything
Right.
in the past to compare it to.
DFA specifically said not to budget anything for cannabis right now. because
No, I
we have no way.
understand that, but we.
I'll say that for June,
Uh-huh.
I believe we got $5,000. That's
Still
what we
good.
got.
Still good. But as time progresses, because a lot of people are using the medical cards, not getting the taxes that we should. Okay, go ahead.
Did you have any other questions about the grants or, I think specifically you were asking about grants, but you're good on the grants then, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, to the level, because we don't really have that many grants, if you look at that, you know, I mean, we have a lot, yeah. and
We have a lot of grants,
I
they're
got
just
in the
lumped
airport,
into
but
one.
very small amount. And that's what I was looking at, that's why when I saw the CDBG in there, I was good. But all in all.
I mean, our miscellaneous grants are 8.6
I'm sorry.
million.
What?
For miscellaneous grants,
Okay.
we have quite a bit of those. Which this wastewater one is in there, that's the big one for it. For right now.
Wow, okay.
Sure, a lot of red in there,
Well, the rest expenditures, I mean, I don't think they would ever be in black. I don't know, we may not have a job. Now, we did talk about possibly, doing $1.50 raise across the board, was the, after we did the, where we wanna be, where we think everybody should be, we did do $1.50. And that $1.50, hold on, I gotta find my paper, where am I at? The $1.50 raise, and specific only to general fund, because, we know that's the most important. So we would go from a deficit of 220,000 to a deficit of 375,000. And that's, again, very rough because of all the other departments that we, supplement, but about 375 if we, just for general fund. But overall, it would be an increase. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So we started off at, what did I tell you originally? 220, right?
Yes.
One second, I need to find this other report real quick. So when I start doing, the personnel schedules, which includes their, you know, what we have to pay out for their Medicare and their FICA. So when I first did the very first one, which again, just included the $12 minimum wage and the para mandate. So from last fiscal year for fiscal year 23 was a difference of about $129,000 just for personnel. If we do the $1.50 increase, it's a difference of $446,000
The $1.50 increase.
across the board.
That's $1.50, not 15, right?
$1.50 across the board for every employee.
But then we have the wage increase coming out.
So that's what I'm saying. So the minimum wage increase, which is mandatory, and the para was an automatic 129,000 from last fiscal year to this fiscal year in personnel.
But that minimum doesn't start until January 1st. But
Right.
we're looking at doing it July 1st.
Well,
It's already started July 1st.
Right.
So we can, I don't know, if they'll go right
No,
back
so
to
what
it.
I'm getting at is it's a 6 months down the road, but you're figuring a 12 month. That's what I was, okay. And then additional,
So if we just do just the minimum wage and nobody else, then it's $128,000 difference, right?
Okay,
From one year to
right.
the next. If you do a $1.50 increase across the board, it's a difference of $446 from one year to the next.
I'll ask you one question. That's for the employees in the hour or everybody?
Everybody. So
yeah.
we are looking for general fund, we're looking at starting off in a deficit of 220 with just doing the minimum wage, or we're looking at,
375.
thank you.
I wrote it down.
So by doing it that way, we're avoiding any compression.
Yes, so if we did the $1.50, as Mark and I talked about earlier, you have employees who were not at minimum wage, but because minimum wage went up, now they're always like right at minimum wage. And so with the $1.50, those individuals would be $1 higher than minimum wage, which would get them out of being at that, at minimum wage. Some of these employees have been here many years and they're at minimum wage.
Well, I noticed that when I was looking at all the individual income, I noticed one was making 10 cents more than minimum wage and being here 10 or 11 years.
Right.
So one of the things we have to look, as we look at our budget right now, is this is where it becomes frustrating. If I had worked here for 11 years or 12 years, and then all of a sudden Paul came in and started working, and I was only making a dime more than he is, that kind of doesn't make it look good.
I know.
from
And
my
that's
field.
why Mark and I have been working on it, and we're taking, and I think when the pay backs were initially created, I think that's why some of the employees were a little upset, because it wasn't taking into consideration the number of years they've been here. So if you got put into a pay band, you started where that pay band was, which may or may not have been fair. But now, what we're looking at is taking, like we said, the 31 cents a year, which would put you
Per step.
per step, yeah, which would put you where you need to be based on your longevity with the city. So, but to get there is gonna cost us 600,000 or something, and that's not including what the city would have to pay for Medicare or FICA. So if we did, to get to that point, maybe we would look at doing it incrementally to get them where they need to be, to avoid that.
And that's why I
Like
said
you're
it's a wish list. It
saying,
was,
somebody new starting should not be making what somebody who's been here for 10 years is making.
and we
And I
have a
agree with you
spreadsheet
100%.
reflecting that. So if someone's been here 12 years, we gave them 38 cents from that beginning starting pay where you enter on that band, that pay band, and 38 cents for each year they've been here. And that
So-
comes up.
Is that in addition to any COLA that you proposed through the years?
So the number that I have included all the COLAs. So what we did, again, we took minimum wage where it's gonna be $12 an hour. And then we took minimum wage when this pay band system was first implemented at 781, was a difference of 419. And once we did that and compared it to employees and their tenure, some people were overpaid, but the majority of people were grossly underpaid by as much as $11 an hour for one department head.
Well, I was looking at all those individual salaries, and some of these people were really, right at a little bit over
Minimum wage.
And that,
And so, because when they started, back then, I think, it was, the beginning pay was like $8.47, if I remember correctly. And then when minimum wage happened, well, now you're starting off at 9. So now you went from 8.47, or maybe you were at 8.60.
no, and I understand
But
that.
now you went,
Yeah.
we got minimum wage, so now no matter how many
No,
years
and I-
you've been here, you were all making the same amount of money, and
Yeah,
it's not
And
fair.
I understand that, but, and a lot of it might be also the fact how the previous commission or anybody else budget for the increase during that period of time. But at this point, we have to look at the fact, how we're gonna stay competitive with the private sector in the labor, you know what I'm saying? And I think the thing that really irked the heck out of me was when I heard that the state legislation could go in and give a 19% increase to the state police, not taking into consideration that municipalities also have to struggle in keeping that law enforcement in there. And now, that's a huge jump, and they should have included the municipalities in that 19% as well.
Well, and it's the same thing they did when they increased minimum wage. They didn't take into consideration municipalities,
Right.
how that's gonna affect them, so,
And so then, it doesn't make us compatible.
Right.
You know, I mean,
and we're losing employees, we have some EMTs that are looking to go to Santa Rosa because they're gonna make more money over there, so we have to be able to retain them.
But the whole deal is, then you look at the fact is that somehow or other, we need to stay competitive. And this is where it's throwing me a little more concerned. Because if I can go to McDonald's and make $13 an hour, and I'm working at the cemetery or all that, making $11 an hour, why not go to McDonald's? I even get a free meal, you know?
I agree.
And then at the same time, I'm not that stressed. Yeah, we have the French benefits that
Right.
comes with it, and
But-
that's very good. But,
But if it comes down to how much money you actually take home, you may not want your fringe benefits, because
That's
you'll be
correct.
taking home more. Even if you went and worked somewhere making the same amount of money you make an hour, you'd be taking home more. And I agree with you. I
We
believe
have to
that our
stay
employees
competitive.
need to be,
Compensate.
compensated for everything that they put into the city. They need to be compensated for, sticking around and dealing with COVID, and they do. It's just, how much of a hit do we take now or later? What do we do?
we have to decide based on what are we gonna do. Are we gonna be able to keep some employees? Are we gonna be able to keep, some of our employees that we already trained and skilled? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't wanna lose any employees.
No, because it
We're not
costs
looking
money
at
to
cutting
train them
anybody.
and certify them.
Right.
This costs money. And it's crazy for us to put all this money in training, sending this to whatever is required to do, whether it's the water treatment, whether it's the police department, or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, we just pay for somebody else to take it away from us.
Well, and then the other thing that we talked about was not only compensating our employees that have been here for many, many years, also staying competitive. So that means that our beginning pay can't be just at minimum wage, because like you're saying, you can go work at McDonald's and make $13, or you can come here and make 12.
Or work at the cemetery and make 11.
You don't wanna do that. You don't wanna do that.
And it's in the private sector too. We see it too, because the problem is, we have a lot of interns that come in and work for us. And the only reason they're working for us is because they get their student loans paid off. Come at the end, we train them, they're excellent, now they know how to do very good diagnosing, they know how to do a lot of things. Their student loan is completely paid, and they split. And somebody else drives them in a higher private enterprise.
Right.
And this is what's gonna happen with the city, and we cannot continue to cover our residents with the service we have to provide if we can retain our employees. So we have to look at that whole picture, and that's why I was looking at other avenues on how we can come up with a little more increase to help retain people. It's just really hard, but we have to see what we can do, or what we can cut.
Right.
Because we really need the retention of we invested in them, and then to lose them just for somebody else. No.
Sometimes that's the way it goes, Mr. Mooney.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be, because like I said, we belong to the municipality, we belong to all those people, and they didn't advocate for us to get money for our own law enforcers, and they were not getting 19, so we're gonna lose our training employees. I would go for 19, I don't care how many years I've been here, and that's
No,
not
we're
a
about
lot
to salary.
of But meanwhile, I have to cover, the city has to cover the safety of other people as well.
Yeah.
We have to look and see what we're gonna be able to come up with to help out, because we cannot continue working scouting crews and everybody, because how much money do we pay in overtime when we're so short-handed?
For which department?
Yeah.
For most of the departments, when they're overtime, And you see that a lot, you know what I mean? When people quit, all of a sudden you look at the budget and you see a huge.
So
amount
the
of
only
money.
ones that probably have overtime, to be honest, I mean, they might have had a few here and there, like the cemetery, they would be able to flex their time. If they had a funeral on a weekend, they could, adjust their time throughout the week, take turns taking hours off so that they would accumulate overtime. But luckily PD, they have been almost fully staffed, so their overtime has been down. EMS overtime was huge because they were short-staffed. So
Now it flip-flop now, PD. 's
yeah,
50
now
employees
PD
and
is
EMS
short-staffed
got-
and EMS
Wait a
is
minute,
full
you're saying
staff.
the PD is fully staffed?
They were, we're talking
Well,
last year.
Right now, they're not.
Well, they just lost a couple, right? Couple?
Last year, yeah, we did, this is last year, last year, the fiscal year, we did real good, and then, but here after the first of the year, we lost a couple of guys, and without applicants, the overtime has increased. It's
And
just
that's what I'm
recently
looking
started.
That's what I'm looking at. We're, regardless whether we'd be able to go up on the hourly, then all of a sudden, now we're paying, let's say somebody's working 10 hours. Now we're working overtime, and all of a sudden, instead of having higher pay or be able to recruit and not people leave to the state police and everywhere else, then all of a sudden now we're paying quite a lot of money.
Right.
Because then he throws out the budget because we're so short-staffed.
And that's what I'm saying. So for PD, because they had been fully staffed, whereas EMS was not, EMS's
Well, the
overtime
same
was
thing EMS, yeah.
huge.
But when you have good salaries,
Exactly.
you know,
And that's where we need to get, which is where Mark and I have been working on. But it's a huge number, but
it is.
I think it would be worth it if we could maybe incrementally get to that point to show the staff that they're appreciated and that we want to keep them for
What is minimum wage now?
$11.50, and it's going to 12 in January.
Okay.
Like I said, you might have an employee that got in, and it was $8.47 minimum wage. They've been here 5-10 years, and guess what? They only worked their way up back to minimum wage. It's disappointing.
Exactly.
That'd be very discouraging. wouldn't it?
Unfortunately, this isn't the only,
Happens all the time.
Yeah, and it doesn't
well, when
happen.
I retired from teaching, new teachers were making more than I was after 35 years of teaching.
That's what I'm saying.
And that new teachers were starting at higher than what I was. So it's,
But they're getting their, yeah. Well, and it is happening because there's somebody in the private sector.
Yeah.
Been working 40 years, and the person coming in to replace that individual is making just a little bit less than what he's making.
well, they may not have been making more, but they were making as much, but sometimes even a little bit more than I was.
Right.
So, yeah, so it happens, unfortunately.
So back to the landfill real quick. So Alex is saying that the $46 a ton has been the same since it opened. And, you might have to consider stopping RDM
We have
since
to
it
look
sounds
at
filling up fast. And he did say that we're the second highest charging landfill in the state.
Really?
Maybe
Where would
when
RDM go?
landfill is Complying.
They would probably have to go
EPA,
to
that's when the expense
Clovis,
Comes in.
which is what we had to do when we were doing South 2 for a little while because we were already.
Right.
And we're behind the 8 ball. When I talked about potentially not having a meeting, we need to at least approve the engineers to start that task to design the landfill, because I mean, it's filling up quick, so we may have to put that, I think we need to put that on next release.
Yeah.
Agenda.
And he said we're the 5th highest,
Second,
second highest.
at $46 a ton, we're the second highest
It's been like that for how long?
since it opened. So I think that new landfill opened in 2011, I'm gonna say.
Well,
Something like that.
Yeah, it was a little lower than that.
11 years.
Wow.
So are there any, so for the next meeting, next Friday, are there any,
Next Thursday.
next Thursday, any other variations you'd like to see maybe on salaries?
yes.
Well,
Like any different amount or like, but what What rate would you like to see?
I'd like to see what would be more compatible with the rest of the employee, the skilled employees or whatever. Everybody's skilled because everybody has to be trained, you know what I mean? But for our employees, I'd like to be a little more compatible, maybe not 100%, but close enough that we don't get shut off the saddle, you know what I mean? Because, it's really hard. I know that when I first came here about 6 years ago on the council again, we were having a lot of trouble because of the way the budgets were, and there were difficulty to be able to give any kind of increase or rate, we did a lot of sacrificing with our employees. So now I do see some of these things in the budget, it looks good, the revenue is looking good, everything's good. How we could come out with some sort for all the employees overall and giving them a little more this year than we have in the previous year, And a lot of it is, because we've gone through a lot, hopefully tributary looks good, and sometimes we might have to gamble, and if we gamble too much this year, maybe we won't be able to give any back next year, but at the same time, see what we can do to help out. Because I hate the idea that when somebody's working for us and all of a sudden I go to the adjacent community and they're there, in some cases, it's better if they go there than here because they're not doing a good job. But a high percent of it, it's hard to see somebody we work, we train, and everything went through it, and then all of a sudden somebody grabs it right from under it once they meet their obligation, whether it be the wastewater, whether it be the, wherever they have to be certified, and all of a sudden, and remember, trash, you have to have CDLs. And the CDLs, trucking firms are paying good. But anyway, that's what I like. If you guys can find some more revenue to be able somewhere to help out, I would like to see a little better income raise on motor because they've been good. They have suffered enough. Thank you.
One good thing that Rochelle and I talked about, and we didn't talk about the projects, but projecting revenue for next year, I'd expect a lot more GRT because of these construction projects that are going to take place. But again, that's just 1 year. That's not going to be consistent. We'll have the wastewater, we'll have KOA, we'll have the railroad board underneath the tracks. All that will accumulate to be millions of dollars. That's not $1 million GRT, but they're $1 million projects, which will return. But again, that's only 1 year.
But that's what I'm saying is we can look at it and you can even take a gamble on it, in projecting. And then let's say nothing happens. Well, next year we won't, and then we have to face the music and say, well, sorry, we went a little higher, but now this year because we did not get the projected income or revenue that we expected, we're not going to give a raise. And we'll have to face it.
Well, I think that with, having a lot of leaving a lot of the positions vacant, we've had quite a bit of salary savings.
That's what
So our beginning cash balance, for fiscal year 23 is looking at about 4.3 million, which is, better than what it was when we began in fiscal year 22. So, maybe that's what we needed to do is to build up a little bit so that now for everyone who's been sacrificing for the last 2 or 3 years, that now we've shown that we've kind of built up our cash. I don't want to get carried away.
No, I don't
I
want to
still
get carried
think that
away, but
there's
I want to be
some
fair.
areas that we need to maybe look at changing something up as far as when it comes to general fund, but I do think that the employees deserve something right now.
Yeah, they do. And because we have been really doing a shoestring budget when it came to the salary increase since I've been on here because it was such a mess when, and the revenue was really depleted. Now we're getting to get a little better, a little more stronger, and we can afford to take a chance in working on a higher rate of income for our employees, because that's what makes the city.
Right.
And that's all, if you can look into it, see what we can come up, and we can go up higher, I think it's great. Because I see people here being very positive, I don't care what anybody says. I see more empty buildings being renovated than we have.
Percent of employees under general fund,
What's that?
percent of the employees that are under general fund as opposed to the,
As far as like
Enterprise.
utilities and price stuff.
Probably pretty high.
It's
80% maybe.
It's not that high. I'd say about 65, 70.
Anyway, what I was getting at, you pretty well know now, $1% or $1 increase, how much it's gonna be. So we can estimate on that, so I don't think you need to.
Right,
look
so
at
that number, the 375 is specific just to general fund employees.
For $1, yeah,
For the $1.50. And that
$1.50.
includes their Medicare, their FICA that we have to pay on.
yes, because those increase.
Yes.
So what I'd like to see is, like I said, June 30th ending revenue and balance.
Yes.
So we know,
And you will, because I have to report it.
yes, and then we need to look at everybody's budget this year.
Yeah.
Their projected budget, because even though we were looking money for employees, fuel, everybody's budget's probably gonna have to go up. Right now, inflation's right at 10%.
Right.
So we need to be able to fund our departments and make sure they can do their maintenance and have fuel to do their work.
Or it's also a matter of the department has also figuring out ways to save some of that fuel. Find a different way,
That's true.
double, triple up your employees in the vehicle. I don't know, somehow figure something out,
So-
some of the gas.
When we look at that, fund our departments and all, then we can see what we can do with employees. And
Yes, so next Friday for sure, because I'm planning on having my final bar for fiscal year 22, because I need to get it submitted to DFA. So we'll have that finalized, and then for sure the numbers will be different for budget for fiscal year 23.
Told you I'd make you a headache, but anyway, thank you.
I already have it.
Regardless of it, yeah, I know that a lot of it's gone up, but at the same time, we also have to figure out the fact is that we can continue operating with short staff in the airport. And we cut some staff last year, to make the budget this year.
Did you have anything else, Mike? Okay.
So we have about a 30-minute break before work session.
This was.
Oh, this was the work session?
Yeah.
Oh.
So you have to about an hour and a half before commission.
Sorry, I was the one that thought it was gonna take a lot of time
Well,
on
unless you have
this
more.
budget. But, we're not to the hard part yet.
No, this was just kind of the
Right, this is
the
just
broad
leading
view
up
of it,
to
then we
the
start
hard part.
focusing in on it, and you'll get the actuals, and then once we get the actuals, we'll see the rest of it. We wanted to give a ballpark though, what we're looking at just to do an increase for personnel. And,
And in course, I think that's everybody's priority anyway.
like I said, there's a lot to look at with the departments, and there's a lot of department heads that were given ample funds this year for utilities, for equipment, and it went unspent. They didn't spend it. So that's disappointing to see. I don't want to cut it too much this next budget, because I think they need those, just it didn't get utilized. And that's
Wow.
disappointing.
It's disappointing, but it also rolls back, and so then, but if, like you're saying, if you maybe not cut it completely, but cut some of it, obviously if you didn't need all of it, maybe there was too much to begin with. Then we
You
can
know,
get back in.
and I gotta recommend those departments if anything, because they're being conservative and conscious about what they're doing. I mean, I work in some state agencies, and at the end of the year, we say, oh, we're gonna be cut, and we bought junk at the end of the year. You know, I mean, like, order so many more papers and, printing papers, new machines. Because we needed to spend it all, because when the budget came up, we needed to show that we still needed to maintain that level budget. So I really think the employees were conscious and they did a good job, especially since last year we were putting people on part-time, cutting their things. So I really commend them for doing that, and we shouldn't punish them.
I'm just gonna say, I don't wanna see us cut it, because if we might have to increase it because of the fuel and the other costs, we could leave it the same and say, you didn't spend, we're not giving you any more right now, because, but we're not increasing it either.
But the other concern that I know many departments have is, their equipment is
Old.
super old,
Mhm.
it's super dated. We don't have any money to buy any new equipment, and, that's
Yeah.
another area that we need to be thinking about that's very concerning.
And if you look at those numbers you gave, even though small as it is, gross usage tax is looking good. It has always gone up rather than down, except for a couple of years.
Yes, grocery
So
stores
you're
is
looking
looking
at a
good.
very positive trend of growth.
Mhm.
So actually, all in all, we look good, even though we're still suffering
When revenue goes up, expenses go up.
That's right.
to a point. But
Well, like I said, I can't wait till August.
And how many departments, revenue, or the enterprise department have capital outlay
It's
budget
been going down.
for vehicles and such? It's been for two, one.
They don't have a specific capital outlay just for their departments. We have a capital outlay line item.
Yeah. But no departments
And most
have
departments have
money.
their own capital. outlay.
Nobody has, money put into that line item. They
So
have
for
to come and
example-
talk to the city manager.
Okay,
to get
so
approval.
water department needs a new vehicle.
They need a Vector truck, which is about what,
350,000, I think they told me.
Goes right with the price, just about with the basic engine.
Wastewater needs a new, I don't know what they call that truck. The one they use to check the wells, it has the, something in the back. I don't know what it is, but
just he was wanting, I think, another pickup, but with some kind of like a winch or something to pull the pumps.
there you go. So that one's like $60,000. So I mean, but all departments are needing equipment.
So what I'm getting at then, what funds that capital outlay for the, like the enterprise? Is it general fund that funds that and they all operate on that? Because they don't have the funds, they have their own right now. Okay, so that's another reason we need to look at.
Yeah, that's the hard part, and that's why, like in the beginning, I said, I understand we need equipment for the employees that are there, but we also have to think about funding the employees where they need to be, because if not, we could have brand new equipment sitting at the yard and no employees are running. So it's difficult, we need both,
We need both.
and it'd be nice to get to the spreadsheet we talked about and we've been working on. I don't think it's realistic this year, we have to chip away at it within the next 2-3 years, I believe. But we can do some good, I think, this year where we bump it up. Nonetheless, I think this was adopted by resolution, this pay band. We'll have to amend it anyhow, at least get it to reflect the new minimum wage. Everybody may not get what our wish list was, but we have to follow that pay band. And that's what we need to follow. If not, we can't just make up whatever someone's gonna pay.
So the commission did it by resolution and then it never followed.
Correct.
So what kind of penalty is in with that?
I'm assuming not. I went against it because, I mean, obviously, we can't pay $7.81 for
Right.
minimum wage. So as minimum wage goes up, we bumped up the minimum wage.
So that's gonna be the hard part, isn't it?
Actually, we have to look at everything that we have, whether it be equipment or whatever, because we don't want to be in the same predicament that we were last year, but we winded up with no ambulance because we didn't replace any. And then all of a sudden, we have a problem. And thank God we got it solved. We had to go to DFA and we had the help from the governor and we winded up getting something. But at the same time, you have to look at the fact is, if something's needed, we need to start looking how to get that funding for it before we wind up with what happened last year with nothing. And so even if we have to go to capital outlay in the state and get it, then we need to see what we have to do. We have to be well informed so that we know what we want and what to get.
And so the budget also goes off, it's supposed to go off the ICIP list. And number one on here for year 22 was the landfill. And then upgrade the water and wastewater, Aver addition, the water tank rehab, so the water tank rehab's already in.
Oh, we got a lot of grants on that too.
But, I mean, there was a lot for fiscal year 22, but then for fiscal year 23, we only have the runway 21 turnaround. So, I'm not sure on how these projects get sorted for ICIP, but
Actually, the commission is supposed to prioritize.
Which will be coming up on the next commission meeting, community development will be presenting that what we have and making recommendations on how to adjust ICIP.
Can I throw my recommendation on here?
Absolutely.
I haven't seen our ICIP. Should be a 5-year wish list for everything, for every department. And you can try to prioritize. Go ahead.
Not necessarily DFA, we used to do that, and it used to be
Yes.
4 pages long, they
And
said.
they've restricted that now? Okay, sorry.
They said not so much a wish list, it's more shovel-ready and more realistic, like your top 10.
So where would
So that
equipment requests
doesn't,
go?
that doesn't, infrastructural capital improvement plan should be a 5-year plan for anybody for capital improvement.
I agree. And airport has their own, and senior center has their own. It's completely separate from the main ICIP. But there's certain things we have to put on there to be eligible for certain grants.
Absolutely, that's why anything and everything.
Yes.
So, all right.
But we'll be having a meeting discussing ICIP and discussion on how to prioritize where they should land, and then ultimately we'll have to vote on it. I think you have to adopt a resolution and we have to submit it to DFA.
And any of your capital outlay and all depends on on that ICIP.
Correct. The higher it's ranked, the better. So
Yeah.
whatever we're thinking about for next year already to try to go through the session to obtain funds for the capital outlay, that's typically your number 1 priority.
Anything else? Okay, then we'll adjourn until 6 o'clock.
So who was in charge of getting meals from you on out? Was it your job?
So
Yours, Mike.
unfortunately, I'm not a secretary, right?